In the absence of money and programming and so on, we've seen a lot of what people call sort of tactical urbanism. Not so much in New York, but in other cities, these the kind of guerrilla plazas, the pop-ups. There's an organization called Better Block that tells people how to take over a parking space and turn it into a cafe and whatever. So do you think that's a fruitful development, and is that something we should encourage, and is that a way for there to be a more democratic adaptation of public space, do we think?
Definitely, yes. I think that it's a way of the public having a voice finally, because in all of the other spaces, I mean, one admires Central Park by how it is kept, but the public doesn't have a voice in what it is and how it is managed. And the same with all of these developer spaces. The public has no voice whatsoever. It's true that in the public plazas, they have acquired some sort of voice, which is a very good development, but it is absolutely a very good thing because finally it's giving a voice. And I think that we're going to see some interesting developments in public spaces just out of those movements.
Diana, if I could just slightly address whether the public has no voice in these other things.
All right.
I don't think it's no voice. I mean, after all, these are laws and policies that are crafted by government in which there are public hearings. I don't want to exaggerate what that all means, but it's not as if the public is completely absent. I think what you're dealing with is sort of almost a more direct democracy kind of thing. And by the way, it doesn't have to be guerrilla. Most of these programs now are in fact formalized as parklets programs, but they are very democratic in their application processes for taking over a parking space, and different people can apply for it, and it's quite open. So, and because of the small scale and small cost, one can have yet another category of public space. Again, we're dealing with lots of different categories of public space. Streets are public spaces, sidewalks are public spaces, parks, privately owned public spaces, the plazas. I mean, there are lots of different things. Water is public space. So I think we want to think systematically. Of course, we always categorize because people specialize. I mean, my God, I wrote a book about privately owned public space, and believe me, it's not that I think that's the most important thing or that it doesn't relate to your plazas, and yet they wouldn't have been in because I was focusing on one study. But all of these things should be looked at systematically, and I think this addition of the parklets, bottoms up, whether we call it tactical urbanism or pop-up plazas or parklets or parks, spaces, parking spaces to parks is a wonderful kind of evolution and development.
Can I modify my own statement in response to him? Basically, what I think that these movements are doing is entering a category that we didn't have before into public space, which is also temporary. And I think that the value of temporary is enormous, and we didn't have that before at all. And so I think that most of these movements have that characteristic.